Happy Blackened Friday, everybody! Alex here with another album review. But not just any album, the big one. The culmination of the last 3 months of videos, the climax of Falltallica, Hardwired to Self-Destruct. Hardwired is the 10th studio album from Metallica, and the first album in 8 years, as long as you don't count Lulu. But nobody counts Lulu. The crew looked to continue their return to proper thrash that they started with Death Magnetic, and when they released the titular single to the new album, fans were sent into a frenzy, not only from the song itself, but also the announcement of a new double album that was coming. Some people would say that the hype around Hardwired was way too high to ever be met, but if there's any band who could do it, it'd be Metallica. Do they pull out the modern masterpiece that we've been anticipating? Let's find out. The album opens with the aforementioned titular track Hardwired, which comes out of the gates fast and thrashy. Its catchy beat and chorus do just as good of a job as hyping up the album to come as it did when it was initially released, and it's a good sign of things to come. Following Hardwired is Atlas Rise, the third track previewed by the band, and it's more or less continues the flow of the album. Though it isn't nearly as angry or aggressive, it still features a catchy chorus with an equally catchy guitar hook alongside of it, and a nice big instrumental patch in the middle of the track that's really enjoyable. Now That We're Dead is the next track, the only song out of the first 4 tracks off this album that weren't released prior to the album's release. It's an okay track, but it doesn't pop as much as the previous 2 tracks, and at parts sounds like something that would be off of Load, but with a thrashier tuning to the band. The final early release song comes next, with Moth into Flame, cruising through all the stuff that we've heard, meaning that after this, we're jumping into the deep end. This track features one of the better solos off of the album, as well as some of Lars's fastest and most frantic tick drumming. When Hardwired came out, people were excited but timid at the same time at being burned again by the Big M, but Moth into Flame helped soothe worries as it's a track worthy to be amongst their decorated discography. Jumping into the unknown now, our next song is Dream No More, which is quite slower tempo than anything else thus far. This is where the album starts to feel different, as there's not many other songs from previous albums that I could really compare this one to, but the heavy feel along with the slow tempo does make for a nice track. Halo on Fire, however, less so. The final track of Disc 1 is another slow track, but it's also too long, and it doesn't really achieve anything worth of its runtime, as it sounds like filler from the Load or Reload era. Moving on to Disc 2, we start off with Confusion, which, despite being fine enough in terms of a good sound and vocals, is pretty uninteresting. That unfortunately is going to come up a lot in the second disc, as the next song, Man Unkind, also has the same problem. It's too long, it's not very interesting or enjoyable. I've seen a person or two say that this is the worst Metallica track ever, though I can't say that I agree with that. I'm looking at you, We Did It Again. It's probably the weakest off of this album. Here Comes Revenge is heavier than the previous tracks on this disc, and it's a bit more captivating as well, but not really enough to save it from the same problem of being longer than it needs to be, resulting in a loss of interest near the end. Same for Am I Savage? Except this song has nothing interesting in it, much like Confusion and Man Unkind. This is followed by Murder 1, which is actually a tribute track to Lemmy of Motorhead, as it makes many references to their songs and to their legacy, making for a nice little tribute, even if the song itself from a critical standpoint isn't anything spectacular. And finally, rounding out the album is Spit Out the Bone, where Metallica get loud and hard, delivering the heaviest track on the album, with this and Hardwired serving as teasers of the potential that they still have in them to deliver fast and loud thrash metal. The biggest problem with this album is that it's scattered. There's no one style that they really stick to throughout the whole entire album, which makes it a frustrating listen. The songs that they released prior to the album's release, like Hardwired, Moth into the Flame, and Atlas Rise, were all songs that we expected from current-day Metallica. They were still fast and heavier, but also combined their mastery of accentuating vocals, which is probably the best trait that they mastered from the Load and Reload era. Unfortunately, that was just one part of the album, with the rest of the album bringing a lighter style, sounding more like something off of that Load or Reload era, with the only difference being that the instruments sound a bit more thrashy and James sounds a bit more aggressive. They also had a problem with song length in this album, as about half of the songs on the album run longer than they probably should. Magnetic had a lot of long songs, but that album was more prog, like Justice for All, whereas this album was just even described by the band as being less proggy and more straightforward riffs. Also, to go with that, the album did not need to be a double. at all. It would all actually fit on one disc at its current length. That's not even including the fact that they probably could have shaved a couple of minutes off of a couple of songs. There's no clarification as to why it's a double, so I guess we're left to assume because fuck you, we're Metallica. My final rating for Hardwired to Self-Destruct is a 6 out of 10. I'm worried that I've criticized this album too much in comparison to anything else that I've been reviewing. Maybe it's just because I have on my rose-colored glasses and I remember what Metallica could bring to the table in the 80s, but I don't think we're going to get any material like that anymore. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they need to do to put out a highly rated album though. It would need to be something that captures what Metallica was before and what they are now. An album that had 8 or 9 tracks like Hardwired and Spit Out the Bone would have been the dream album in 2016. Thrashy and catchy while still having the clear, impactful vocals that they've mastered. That being said, however, I still very much enjoy this album and I'll definitely be listening to it more. Just maybe not every track. Well, that's it for both this review and for our Falltallica event. Thank you so much for taking this journey with us, but we're probably not going to do any more Metallica content for a while. We are all Metallica'd out. If you're just tuning into our channel for the first time, you can check out the Falltallica journey in the link below. If you liked this review, we always enjoy likes. And if you'd like to catch more content from us, make sure to smash that goddamn subscribe button. We have a lot of content we're looking at putting out soon, like our first electronic album review when the new Deadmau5 album drops next month, and we're definitely going to be doing some best of 2016 lists, which finally gives us a chance to get back to Avenged Sevenfold's new album, and some more gaming content coming down the pipe as well, like releasing reviews on the new Pokemon games and Steep, as well as hopefully some more retro gaming content, maybe even another Intoxigaming. For Graham and Ryan, I'm Alex, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.